Okay, so I've got the Los Angeles Chargers depth chart up here. I'll just go through their whole roster, go through each position group, and kind of just give my thoughts on the whole team. So, I mean, first position group receivers, they got Keenan Allen, very underrated receiver, good route runner, just very good all-round receiver. Doesn't have elite speed, but very good red zone target, contested catcher. Just an amazing weapon. Like, if he can stay healthy, he can be have a really amazing year because he's just very good at winning his routes one on one. So just an amazing player. So that's a very good number one receiver. And even the number two receiver, Mike Williams, has just been a very solid receiver. Has dealt with some injuries, but probably one of the best contested catchers in the league. Just going up for 50-50 balls. He's just very good at him and Keenan Allen. Both very good at that. So that's very good. You got two really good red zone targets there, two bigger receivers. And Mike Williams, another really good route runner. So I think he could get a new contract. He might be out of here after this season, but we'll just have to see because I think he's a good receiver. I think he could, on other teams, he could be could be a number one receiver on quite a few teams. So I do like Mike Williams. So the top two receivers, very solid. And when this thing decides to freaking want to show me the depth chart, I'll go and tell you about Josh Palmer, the receiver who they drafted from Tennessee. Or I was talking about him now because I hate this app. Yeah, so Josh Palmer, I mean, they drafted him pretty early last year. I was surprised that he went that early. But I did think it was a pretty good fit with the Chargers. I think he could play in the slot for them straight away. And I mean, Josh Palmer, he didn't get the stats at Tennessee. But he just had a really bad quarterback play, Josh Palmer. So I could definitely see him having a better season than what he really showed at Tennessee because I mean just quarterbacks were horrible. And he's a very good route runner. So I think working out of the slot, he can be very good at that. Can also play on the outside. But I think he's probably their third receiver going into the season. So I say Josh Palmer probably start in the slot for them. Even Tyron Johnson had some good plays as kind of a deep threat. He was a pretty good backup for Keenan Allen, Mike Williams as they go down with injuries. He could be a good player to step in. Because I mean Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have both dealt with injuries over the years, so they do need some good backups. I think Tyron Johnson could be a pretty decent backup. Same with Jalen Guyton is also another good deep threat, kind of more of a returner. So Jalen Guyton, that's another pretty decent backup. We'll get it in for some really just deep plays. And KJ Hill's decent. Austin Prohl. They don't really got much else besides those dudes, but it's an alright receiver group. They got some players, definitely. So going to the offensive line, Rashawn Slater, who they drafted with their first pick in the first round. I thought that was a very good pick. I think Rashawn Slater, you start him straight away at left tackle. I think he plugs in perfectly with the Chargers and is an amazing player straight away. I just think he could be like a Tristan Wirfs this year where he just comes in and is just immediately good because he's probably the most pro-ready, really tackle and just a really good player coming out of Northwestern. Did opt out last year, but is just a very good left tackle. So I think that's a very good player to help and protect Justin Herbert. Trey Pipkin is also a decent backup, so that's fine. They have Ode Abushi starting at left guard here. Yeah, that's probably their main weakness really on the offensive line. He's not an amazing guard. Adebushi is fine, really. Tyree Lewis could win the guard spot, or Trey Pipkins actually I think could move to guard. I think that would probably be better. Trey Pipkins playing guard. He's probably better than Ode. So I think possibly that could happen because I mean Ode is not really a good player. So we'll have to see what they do there. I think they could definitely move Trey Pipkins inside. Or if they really want to, they can move Rashawn Slater inside and have Trey Pipkins at tackle. But I say keep Rashawn Slater at tackle. Center Corey Linsley, they got in free agency. One of the best centers in the league. That was a very good pickup. Will be very good for Justin Herbert, having a really reliable center in there, which they haven't really had. And even Scott Questionberry is a pretty decent backup, so that's fine. But Corey Linsley, that's very good for your passing game and run game. Just good all-round center, really good commander of the offense. And I also got Matt Phelan to play at guard. He's pretty decent from Pittsburgh. Very versatile. Like if you get injuries at tackle or other guard positions, he can definitely fill those roles because he's extremely versatile. It's just a solid offensive lineman. Brendan James, who they drafted, is also pretty decent. Or was it undrafted? I think they actually drafted him. Yeah, I think it was a draft pick. He's fine as a backup. Probably not anytime really going to be a starter. I think that's okay as a backup. Right tackle, Brian Balaga. Yeah, very good if he stays healthy. Wasn't really healthy last year. So, I mean, if he does, not get healthy, then they don't really have much players to step in and replace him, like Storm Norton, Ryan Hunter, not really good players. So I think if Brian Bulaga is healthy, he's a very good tackle. So that's fine. Tight end position, Jared Cook's still a pretty decent receiving threat. Had those freaking stupid fumbles last year, and I'm a Saints fan, and I got triggered by them. I just wanted him out. Mostly because I wanted Adam Trotman to start because I thought he was very good and when he got chances, but this is not a Saints video. And I mean, Jared Cook, he's definitely not as good as Hunter Henry, but he's kind of that veteran tight end, and they kind of needed to get somebody reliable in there. So I thought Jared Cook can definitely be that. I think he could have a pretty decent year. Good all-around player, really. Trey Mckinney also, who they drafted, is another really athletic tight end. Just a really good athlete, not an amazing blocker, is alright. I mean, he did have a lot of blocking snaps at Georgia because that's what they like to do. So, I mean, Trey McKinney, just kind of limited sample size. But you could see him kind of transitioning into that number one tight end role, definitely. And they don't really got nobody else at tight end like Donald Parman, probably their third tight end. So it's fine. And quarterback position, of course, Justin Herbert had an amazing year last year. Won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. It was very surprising. I did not see him being that good. I thought he was like the third best quarterback in the draft class, and he wasn't really that amazing at Oregon. So I was very surprised when he just had an amazing year, just slung the ball all around the field, was very good, very smart, didn't throw a ton of interceptions. This was a very good rookie year for Justin Herbert. So I think that's very promising. You got your future quarterback there, which they were kind of looking for to replace Phillip Rivers, who's there for such a long time. So now they got their next guy in Justin Herbert. And Chase Daniel's a good veteran backup, so that's good there. You get Chase Daniel, who can mentor Justin Herbert. And I mean, if Justin Herbert does get injured, Chase Daniel can come in and give you some pretty decent plays, so that's fine. Running back position, Austin Eckler's pretty decent. Kind of more of a receiving back. That's kind of will be his role. He won't run the ball a ton, but it's still pretty good. Amazing lower body strength. Will just break tackles, but more of a pass catcher. So that's a very good weapon out of the backfield. So I think Austin Eckler's a good player. He could have a pretty good year and rack up a bunch of fantasy points if you're into that. Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly, they could definitely battle for that primarily running back role. The running back group's not amazing. Like, I think one of these dudes could definitely develop into something because they're both like pretty young running backs who have quite a lot of potential. So see which, like, if Joshua Kelly or Justin Jackson win the starting role, then Justin Jackson kind of be the more primarily runner. Joshua Kelly will also get some pretty decent snaps. They also got Larry Roundtree, who they drafted. I think it was a draft pick, like late round draft pick. So we'll see if Larry Roundtree, kind of more of a comparison to like Austin Eckler in his play, kind of played that more of a pass catcher role. I could definitely see him making the roster. Maybe he could beat out like Joshua Kelly or Justin Jackson, because it's not like they got a ton of amazing player like running backs. So I could definitely see Larry Roundtree making the roster. So that's good. Let's go on to the defense. So supposedly they got no backups to Joey Bosa. So get yourself some backups, but it's probably not true. But Joey Bosa, of course, really good pass rusher. Kind of flew under the radar last year. Just a very solid player. I don't think he's ever really going to be like rack up a ton of sacks, but just really good all-around player. I mean, I think he will deserve a lot of money in the future because I think Joey Bosa, very good edge rusher, just good all-around player, really. So Joe Bosa, you got yourself a stud defensive lineman there. Linval Joseph, a nose tackle, yeah, just a big run stopper, helps in that game. An okay pass rusher for like his position and the size that he plays at, but that's not really his priority. He'll just stop the run really and eat up blocks. And Christian Covington to back him up's pretty decent. I did not know he went there, but turns out he did. So that's pretty decent. You could definitely see him kind of being that rotational player for them. So I think he could be pretty decent at that, get some good playing time. They always got this like so weird how they have this set up. Like, yeah, I guess it's fine. Like Jared Tillery, probably be the other edge rusher. Yeah, he's pretty versatile, can play D tackle on defensive line. Hasn't really lived up to where they drafted him and what they probably expected him to do. But I think he could have a pretty good year next year. Like maybe a possible breakout, like under the radar breakout player. I think it's a definite possibility. So I think Jared Tillery to see with him. They also got Justin Jones, defensive tackle. It's alright. I think they could probably use another defense tackle or defensive end, definitely. Probably defensive end. Like, even both, even. They could probably use another good player in that position to really help out the defense line, because kind of only really Joe Bosa and then just some players really to fill in that role. The Uchenna Nwosu's probably, yeah, he's pretty much an outside linebacker, defensive end. He's pretty decent in that role. Rush the passer, kind of from that other defensive end role from Joe Bosa. Pretty versatile, drop back in coverage quite a lot because he's a really good athlete. Same like Kyra Thacker also was a pretty good pass rusher for New York. Not an amazing player. Will probably get you some playing time, like a couple sacks a year, but kind of just more of a backup. I think Chris Rumpf could definitely take over that second pass rush role on that side and be a backup to kind of Joe Bosa and Nwosu. Maybe eventually take over Nwosu and could be Joe Bosa and Chris Rumpf, because Chris Rumpf was very productive at Duke. So I really like Chris Rumpf possibly in the future, because he's pretty raw right now, just kind of a really good athlete. So I think like he could definitely develop into a really good pass rusher. So that's pretty promising. The linebacker position, Drew Tranquil's all right. Probably not really like a high level starter, but he's still pretty decent linebacker, so that's fine. Kazir White's pretty decent. I mean, they're just average linebackers, really. Kazir White's not special, but he can definitely start for you. Kenneth Murray also. We'll see with him, see what he can do. Hopefully, I think he can be better than last year, because he didn't really have an amazing year at linebacker, but not really any linebackers really have good rookie years, because it's a very hard position to play. So I think Kenneth Murray could have a much better season, kind of take over and be a really good linebacker for them. And he's got Drew Tranquil and Kazir White to kind of be those other two linebackers. Nick Neiman also pretty decent backup, was a good player at Iowa, so we'll see with him. So it's fine. Let's go on to secondary. So starting in the slot, it's going to be Chris Harris. That's kind of what he's played his whole career. Still a pretty decent veteran player, but has not really, like, I mean, he has definitely like dropped off his play since like being in Denver, but he's still pretty decent slot corner. So we'll see with Chris Harris Jr. I think he could still be a pretty decent player, but he could definitely drop off quite a lot. And the other corner is probably Michael Davis, to be honest. They did re-sign him, so I think Michael Davis being the other outside corner, he's not an amazing player. He's pretty average corner, to be honest. But I think he's fine to be starting at that other cornerback position. They seem to like him quite a lot. Brandon Faxon's a good backup. Dante Vaughn, Keeman Hall. Yeah, we'll see if they make the roster. Brandon Faxon will probably make the roster. The other cornerback, I think Asante Samuel, who they drafted in the first round, will definitely start at that other cornerback position. He can play the slot, but you kind of got Chris Harris to play that, unless they just want to move Chris Harris to the outside. But I don't think they do that. I think Asante Samuel can definitely play outside corner. I mean, it is what he played at Florida State, and he was very good at that. And I thought it was a really good scheme fit also. So I really like Asante Samuel. I thought he was a very good player coming out of college. I mean, Brandon Staley worked with underside corners in Los Angeles. He had Darius Williams last year, who was a midget but was very good and kind of held his own. So I think kind of being with Asante Samuel, who's not a massive corner, can be very good for Brandon Staley and Asante Samuel. I think Asante Samuel can be a pretty decent corner next year. I think in the future he could be an amazing corner because he's got all the potential in the world. So I do like Asante Samuel, Tavon Campbell, John Brennan, Ryan Smith. More just backups. They don't really got much depth beside that. Maybe they could maybe use another cornerback. It's all right. I think they got a pretty decent cornerback group. It's not as good as it was. Like their secondary was looking amazing, but then they kind of lost a few players. So we'll see if Asante Samuel steps up and Chris Harris can hopefully not drop off a cliff. And then safety, Nasir Adderley. You hope he can possibly have a pretty decent year next year. Hopefully develop into a good safety because he's definitely shown a lot of potential. Dealt with some injuries. We'll see if Nasir Adderley, I think he can be a good safety. Mark Wedabalso, who they drafted, played some corner at Georgia. He's probably a safety, to be honest, with his size. Not amazing movement skills. So probably just a backup safety, but he's pretty decent. So I think that's not a bad player for them. Maybe a bit of a reach in the draft, but it's fine. And Derwin James, amazing safety. It's just injuries, really, man. It's kind of just derailed his first few years. Because if he is healthy, then he's probably a top 5 safety in the year. Amazing player. So I think if he plays a full season next year, very good for your defense and could just like completely turn your defense around and really help you out. So that's very good for them. Special teams, Ty Long's a good good punter. Michael Badley's is an alright punter. Kicker. We'll see if one of these dudes replaces him. He has some dodgy games, but he's okay. Kick return, KJ Hill could definitely do it. They do have some players like Larry Roundtree could be a pretty decent punt returner. If he makes the roster, I think it'd probably be like that. Jalen Guidance played kick return and punt return. Same with Tyrone Johnson. So I'd see if one of those dudes possibly take that position. Joe Reed. So pretty intriguing to see who starts there. I mean, the roster as a whole for the Chargers, very solid. It's going to be hard to win the division for the Chargers next year because they're in a very difficult division. I think it's a definite possibility they could be the second best team in their division and make the playoffs as a wild card team. It kind of just depends if the secondary is good, if like players like Chris Harris don't drop off, and Asante Samuel is good as a rookie, and if Derwin James is healthy and Michael Davis is good. We'll have to see. I think Nasir Adderley is fine. And linebacker position, Kenneth Murray hopefully step up. Defensive line, they can maybe use some more players on the defensive tackle position because they don't got a ton of depth. And I mean, yeah, of course, Joey Bosa stud. Running back, I think is fine. Also, Eckler's really good pass catcher, and I think one of these dudes can develop into a good running back. Justin Herbert, good quarterback, very good quarterback last year. Jared Cook, I mean, the linebacker position's fine. Offensive lines, pretty decent now. Corey Linsley, Rashawn Slater, Brian Balaga, Matt Failer, looking pretty good. Trey Pipkins maybe at left guard. And receiver position is solid also. 2 really good receivers. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and players that can step up like Josh Palmer and Tyron Johnson. So very good for the Chargers. I think they're heading in the right direction. Maybe they need another 1 or 2 years to kind of develop and draft some more players. I think definitely attract free agents in the future. Of course, playing in Los Angeles and stuff. Brandon Staley, I thought was a good head coach hire. So I'd look out for the Chargers to kind of be like a sneaky team next year. So that's very intriguing, and I think the Chargers could definitely make the playoffs. But we'll have to see, and I'll see you next time, and see